This is a jaw-dropping story that you must hear. It tells of one's encounter with an extraterrestrial who confessed that human suffering and trauma nourishes the extraterrestrial and the rest of his overlords. The story goes as follows. This all happened to me about 470 days ago. As for my background, I hold a bachelor's and a professional degree. I am engaged in the profession that I studied, and I have been in this field for 17 years. My bachelor's degree is not in science. I have always been considered a weird guy. I loved UFO and conspiracy theories when I was a teenager, and basically never gave them another thought after I was 18. When I was 19, I saw a grey cigar-shaped UFO in Arizona. But I was up for about 24 hours at that point, so I told one person that I saw it and then chuckled. It was probably 20 miles away from me and disappeared in the blink of an eye. When I was about 29 years old, I saw a red-orange orb with an elevation of about 1,000 feet travel at a speed of about 50 miles per hour. I thought that maybe it was a Chinese paper lantern in the wind. It was soon followed by 2 more orbs with the same color, at the same speed. This time I was with about 50 people. None of them had an explanation. I called the UFO reporting hotline, and my biggest question was if anyone else had seen them. Other than that, I was truly a skeptic in the paranormal. Don't believe in ghosts, don't believe in Bigfoot. Are there aliens? Sure. But none of them have ever visited here because they're too damn far away. This was my default opinion from age 18 and forward. I even had friends who were obsessed with the stuff, and I never paid them any attention and thought they were crazy. When I was about 43 years old, I received something like a bolt out of the blue, where I was asked telepathically if I was ready to receive a communication and willing to engage in communication, even if this meant that my life would change. I never had something like this pop into my head before, so I answered the call with a yes. That was the end of the initial communication until about a month later. I began having ideas about atomic structure and universal field theory out of the blue. I talked with my boss about this, just in passing, and he suggested that it was deep and that I write it down. I wrote it down, showed it to several physicists. Some offered pointers and suggestions and avenues of exploration, and most stated that it contributed absolutely nothing to the field. But they did not offer any discourse to disprove it. None of the scientists told me I was completely wrong for any particular reason. I think that they simply might have been placating me because they don't want to get into an argument about physics with me, just like a philosopher may not want to engage in an argument about God. My unified field theory included no mathematical backing, but made a suggestion on how such mathematics may possibly proceed. Yes, it is written down. Yes, it is public. To me, it might as well be a pseudoscience. Essentially, the theory is that matter itself represents the higher dimensions. During this theory creation, I had long periods of obsessive thoughts and questions. After I completed my draft of the theory and had several comments, I no longer had these thoughts because it was all written down. No more reason to think about anything deeply. Before sleep one evening, while laying down, I began having communications with some kind of entity. I am quite aware of my own internal dialogue. This was different, clear, loud. I don't even remember what was said. I asked, "Who are you?" Mentally, I was presented with an image. The image looked very similar to a mantis head, but was large. Even though I could see the face and the head, the body I could not see. I requested to see his body and was met with resistance and some kind of message that it might not be perceptible, because otherwise it could be confusing and could cause damage to my psyche. I sort of chuckled at that, and I asked if he had some sort of body dysmorphic disorder or if he was just shy. My mind camera panned down, and I saw what is best described as a cloud, dark grey, phasing in and out of existence. The Peanuts character Pigpen came to mind. Somehow long arms were sticking out of the cloud. The face and these arms and the neck of the figure were not clouds. He asked for my opinion on humanity and the human condition, asking if we were worth saving. I thought this was an odd question, and I said that yes, it is worth it. He asked me about love, small-scale violence, and large-scale violence, and I offered my opinions. He asked me about mental disorders and disease. He was focused mostly on mental disorders, and I don't know why. I had studied to become a psychiatrist, but I abandoned this path in college. I gave him my opinions. He seemed open to answering questions, so I began indeed with asking him questions. I asked him where he was from, and he refused to answer. I pressed the question, and he answered like a politician, stating that he came from far away in your terms, but close by in ours. He seemed to imply that there was a relay system in place for telepathic communications that was close by, and that others of his kind were near, because otherwise the telepathic communication would not work. I asked him how the telepathy worked, and he suggested that it had much to do with the quantum physics. He stated that it was nothing special, but that some humans have gone crazy from communications, and he said that I was doing remarkably well. I asked about the conditions where his people are. He showed me a place that was dark and grey, almost like a cave system, but that was somehow made. It was also fairly open. I asked what everyday life was like for them, and he essentially said mining, and that they were obsessed with obtaining a material that he would not discuss, nor discuss why it was important. I asked if it was a metal, and he would not answer. He stated that the entire race was telepathic, and that this meant limited independence and little to no privacy. I asked if he was a miner of this substance, and he implied that he was not, but that the substance is not obtained for the benefit of his race, but another race of mantid creatures who were larger in stature, like the oligarchs of our planet. He seemed to imply that they are not exactly pleasant creatures, and they were not to be trusted, like the politicians and oligarchs of our planet. That to us, they will have an ulterior motive that is perfectly clear to others like them, but that we truly wouldn't be able to understand. I asked for his role, and he stated that he was officially doctor/architect. I asked if they had visited Earth, again trying to get at where he was from. Instead of answering the question, he showed me a picture of his head superimposed over what looked like a typical grey alien. The eyes matched up. He truly did not answer the question, but implied that while he himself did not visit, that the grey aliens were somehow extensions of himself or others like him. He basically stated that he enjoyed our conversation and liked me, and he told me I have cancer in my right lung. He implied that I might be useful for something in the future, and that even though he might get in trouble, he was going to take care of the cancer. I felt his long phase, shifted hand reach through my collarbone, and below my ribs into my lung. I simply felt like a moderate heat. He then said it was taken care of. I asked him if he had family. He stated that he did. I asked him if he loved his family. He again stated that he did, but that it was different than what he knew of our concept of love. He stated that the telepathic communication channels may have something to do with this. He then asked me to get angry, pissed even, like I wanted to kill something. I complied. 4 or 5 more mantis beings showed up and began feeding on my emotions, urging me to provide them with more. I stopped being angry and they went away. And then the one came back. He told me that the afterlife is like this. He implied that damaged, angry souls were tastier. There was something in this where it was implied that drug users enter this realm, or it was my understanding. I asked him if they believed in God, and he essentially said no. He said that while they have religion of sorts, it has more to do with the sciences and political power structure than any real religion. I asked if he could provide some sort of proof to my family or anyone who may be convinced that I was insane. He told me that in the future they will be known, but until then, no. I then begged and pleaded after he said that he would entertain the idea and come up with something. This was essentially the end of our conversation. The next day came. No signs, and no UFOs came popping down for me or my family to enjoy, so that I could tell them that I communicated with something, and that even though it sounded batshit insane, it wasn't. However, the next day, while giving my 2-year-old a bath, my 2-year-old's eyes crossed like he was focusing on something that was right at the tip of his nose. He never acted like that before, or after ever since. I asked him what he was looking at, and he said, "Bubble," as his eyes began to uncross, like he was watching a bubble float away from him. He was moving his hands in front of his face like he was trying to touch it hesitantly, but it was moving away. I asked him, "What color is it?" He replied, "Green," and his eyes watched it apparently fly through the wall. Then I went outside, and 2 of the largest grasshoppers I have ever seen in my life were standing and watching me as I left my house, with eyes that were reminiscent of the eyes I saw the previous evening. The next night, I was asked if I was ready, and I said okay. My mind became inundated with conversations of what felt like hundreds or thousands of these creatures. Some voices were louder than others. The conversations were actually mundane, truly. It was as if I was some kind of rock star being harassed by hundreds or thousands of mantis groupies who wanted to entertain themselves, but they bore me with their conversations and questions. I communicated where I could, but after about 20 minutes or so, I told them that I was afraid that I might go absolutely insane. The same entity as before, who was acting as a sort of conduit for these voices, stepped in as a moderator and implied that this has truly been a problem in the past, and that he wanted to protect me from the voices, and as such, he stopped them as I had requested. He implied that he would contact me again when I was again useful. All communications then stopped. The 8 to 10-inch long gigantic grasshoppers disappeared. I was told not to relay any of this by the entity, because if I did, it would damage my usefulness later on. I have been without any contact of any kind for more than a year. I have contemplated every scenario in the past year, and I have decided that I no longer want to be useful in this regard. So instead, I want to tell you all. Who knows though? Maybe this was the plan all along, but I doubt it.